That is again. Thank you for being patient with me, Miss Evangelist Shaunda. I'm so sorry. All right. I'm going to introduce her one more time, guys, just because we want to get the whole gist of this because she was starting to talk some stuff and the enemy got a little busy. But we're going to repeat that. We're going to repeat that. All right. So, Miss Shaunda Reaves is a leader, a mentor, a speaker, a blogger, trainer, published author, got my book, and she's got a children's book out too, y'all. Evangelist and mother. She enjoys reading books, traveling, spending time with her family. She loves working for the Lord in the ministry, which is something I truly love about her. Shonda has an educational background in elementary education, school counseling, child daycare, education administration, and human services. And one of the things I always ask for all my guests is to give me a quote of something that they really live by and something that I really love that she said that she believes children are our inheritance as parents, teachers and leaders and educators. We should train them to live out the principles of God's word. And I love that. I love
Amen.
that. I mean, the best inheritance you can give to a child is the word of the Lord. And I love that.
Amen. Amen.
All right, so we're gonna go right on into it. So, and I feel like every time, as you were starting to talk before we got cut off, like every time I hear your story, I feel like I learn something new from it. It never gets old for me. Like I feel like I'm just amazed at it's something new every time, and I love that.
Yeah.
So when parents deal with a lot of different things in loss, and one of the things that I've noticed, like even on my timeline, some of my closest friends have lost either their child, their spouse, a loved one that was immediate to their family. And it's like, how do you continue to parent through that? And so that's why I brought you on because you have such a powerful testimony and story. And I want you to share some of those things with us. So, my first question for you is through loss, we go through these stages of grief, right? What are
Yeah.
those stages that we experience?
Okay. For me, I experienced four of the five stages of grief. Of course, we talked about the first stage of grief is usually the denial and the shock phase, and then you go through the anger, depression, bargaining, and then the acceptance phase of grief. Of course, everybody doesn't go through all the stages of grief. You can experience a roller coaster of emotions, and as you know, with a coaster, you're going some highs and some lows, some flipping up and down. So it can be a bouncy ball of emotions. But for me, I experienced with the loss of my husband. I lost my husband in 2020. At that time, our sons were ages 10, 8, and 4. I experienced denial and shock. It was such a unexpected thing for all of us, for my entire household. And I just could not believe that I was a widow at a young age with three young boys and my kids no longer had a father. I could not wrap my head around like this has actually happened to me. So
Mhm.
it took some time. And when I was in the denial and shock phase, it was also God's grace was also there as well. And it gave me what I needed to cope at the time. Eventually, that phase did wear off. And when it did, I began to really experience anger and pain. The anger was there because I could, of course, you start to wonder, why did this happen to me? Um, my kids no longer have a dad, a father.
Mhm.
Who's going to help with raising the boys? Because I cannot be a father.
Mhm.
I don't know how to walk in those shoes. I wasn't built to walk in the shoes of a father. The Lord made me to be the woman, a mother. And that's what I am. So I can never feel my husband's shoes. So my son, my oldest son, I remember sitting down one day and he said, "Mom, who is going to teach me how to be a man?" And I didn't have a response for that question. I just remember putting my hands around him and just holding him.
Mhm.
Um, that question carried a lot of weight, even for me, and that was the breaking of my heart, because I'm looking at my boys, and I know every child needs a father, and it's something that dads can do that moms cannot do. And so I went through the anger stage. It was hard sometimes taking my kids places and walking into certain places and seeing kids with their father. I
Mhm.
mean, the first birthday party we had for my 8-year-old at the time, after the passing of my husband. All dads brought the kids to the party.
Oh, wow.
And it was like, whoa, and you notice it. And
Mhm.
I know he noticed it, and he did, and he brought it up at his birthday party that he wished his dad could be there. And I told him, I wish he could be here as well. And I just gave him a big hug. Sometimes you don't have to have all the answers, just acknowledging their feelings and putting your arms around them, hugging them, letting them know that you love them and you understand. That helps a whole lot. So I just told him I understand, I know, and I just put my arms around him and hug him, and then he just bounced right back and went ahead and started playing with his friends. I thank the dads for bringing them in, and such his friends. They have such good fathers, and it was great to see how they interact with my sons as well, knowing that my sons no longer have a father. So that was something that was great at that time. I went through depression. Depression is when the reality of the loss begins to set in. You begin to realize that this is our new normal. My husband is not coming back. We're going to have to eventually start adjusting to our new way of living without him. It was very heavy, went through lots of sadness, and did not know I was depressed at the time. Lost a lot of weight. It was hard to function because you're grieving and you're carrying the grief of your kids as well, and you're trying to be strong for them. You're trying to protect them at the same time, and so that was hard. Um, and it was like I felt like I was barely breathing, and I'm trying to carry two, three people on my back. And I can remember when I came out of the shock phase for about 3 months, I really didn't cry. And I remember my 8-year-old at the time asking me, did I love his dad? And it that really just shocked me a lot. I said, do I love your dad? I said, why would you ask me such a question? He said, because I have not seen you cry.
Wow.
And I reassured him that I loved his dad. I really did. I was afraid of crying because I felt like if I broke down, who was going to pick me back up, and
Mm.
who was going to be there for them if I broke down. I didn't I and so I felt like I had to just stay strong. But I remember coming home one day and walking in the house, and I called all three of my sons together, and I put my arms around them, and I just began to cry. That was my first time just breaking down and crying. I began to tell them how sorry I was. And at that time, I was apologizing to them because I felt like I had let them down with the loss of their father. Because when he was in the hospital, every day I reassured my kids that, dad is coming home. Your dad is coming home. And he did get a chance to talk to them by FaceTime while he was in the hospital and stuff. So they did see that. But after that stop, they would wonder, and I would just reassure them that, he's coming home, dad is coming home. And it was a lot. I had to constantly be reminded that they were grieving too
Mhm.
in our house. Lots of family pictures were up, and every time I looked at the picture, it would just send pain waves through my body. The grief, the pain sometimes felt unbearable. So I started moving pictures. And then one day, um, I moved a picture, and my son came back there and asked me where the picture was. And I told him I had moved it. And he started screaming and shouting.
Mm.
Like he just had a full blown tantrum, and he was like, "No, mom, no, mom, no, no." And I knew then that I had to stop. I had to remember that they were grieving too. And so even though it was so painful for me to see the pictures, they needed to see the pictures because seeing the pictures of their dad throughout the house helped them to feel as if he was still there. So I did put the picture back, and I under the by the tree, and it was a big, huge picture of him. And I put it back and I let it stay there. and I didn't move it. I just had to, deal with it because I had to, they were grieving too. So I went through the depression phase of it, which was really hard. I had my family there; they were very helpful, supportive. I had friends, sisters in Christ, my leaders. Definitely was praying, interceding. A lot of people were praying for us, checking in on us. I was too weak to even pray for myself. I became mentally, physically, and emotionally weak. So I say really having a good support system when you are dealing with grief and you're trying to parent your kids at the same time is very needed. And then I got to a place where I began to realize that we were going to be okay. And I thank God. God was with us every step of the way. He was there because I completely crashed. I did. It was like my brain completely crashed. Body was completely weak. Everything just seemed like it had dwindled as far as, and I became very thin. I was eating a little bit just to put a little something on my body, in my body. And I remember one of the sisters was like, as long as you are putting one step in front of the other one, you are doing good. So I thought I was doing fine. I really did. I thought I was doing okay. I was still going to work, coming home at that particular time. But all of a sudden, everything just crashed and I could no longer do it. I had to admit myself to the hospital twice for mental health. My family moved in, they started helping with the kids, and it was just such a blessing to have that support. I know you called and checked a lot. You were praying. So many other women of God and men of God were also praying for us, and it was great. My brother stepped in, and my brothers were my kids never missed practice. They never missed any school activity. Everything was still going as if I was still functioning, but they were allowed me to rest. And so my kids still went to events. They still did fun things. My brothers kept the yard and stuff clean, even cleaned the house, would come over and cook. I remember one Friday afternoon I got home, my baby brother, he had cooked the entire meal and had cleaned my entire house. So I had that kind of support. My moms and my sisters took turns staying in the house, helping getting the boys ready for school. And so that was great. When I got to a place of acceptance where I became mentally, physically, and emotionally stable, I began to realize that, we were going to be okay. Um, this was our new norm, um, and the boys and I were going to be just fine. And it's just one day I remember being in the kitchen and I felt the urge to cook a meal, and I cooked my kids a meal, and when they ate it, I was just so happy, and it was like I felt my strength come back just a little bit. But every day it continued to get better and better and better from that day. And so I would say when you're parenting through loss, you're gonna go through a roller coaster of emotions. Um, and sometimes it can be so intense. Um, you need a strong support system, church family. Therefore, you therapy is great, and I think I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. But I'll talk a little bit more about therapy later. But those are the stages that I experienced. I didn't go through the bargaining stage of grief, and a lot of times when it's a bargaining stage, a lot of people deal with that prior to losing a loved one. They start saying things like, "God, if you let my loved one live, I'll do this, or I'll stop doing this." I didn't experience the bargaining stage of it. I just I just had it was nothing in my mind to say that he was not gonna make it. I stood on faith all the way to the end. I fought for him to live with everything in me. Um, it just didn't turn out the way I expected. And so those were the stages that I experienced.
And I love that you said a lot of good things. Thank you, Sister Sandra's in here. We
Sandra.
got, yeah, everyone's there. Miss Rakim. Yep, we got a whole bunch of. Oh yeah, we got a lot of people coming in. Thank y'all for joining us. We're talking about parenting through loss, and I'm like, every time I feel like I hear it's just something new every time, and it just touches me. You touched on something at the beginning. You said that I think parenting through loss, one of the key points that you pointed out is that our children go through these stages too as well. And it's very important that sometimes we don't always have to say anything, but just that simple hug, just knowing, let them know that you're there. And I think you hit on some of those key points for parents who have dealt with that, because they always probably ask, well, how can I be strong for them and I'm not strong? And you even said that it's not meant for you to be strong. You'll have those moments, but you're there for those kids, and now you grab them and you cry together.
Yes.
But you're going through this journey together, and I think that's something that's important, is the staying together part. That I think a lot of, if you see a lot of parents in homes when they go through stuff, they separate a lot, or a spouse, if they lose a child, lose a spouse, they argue with other people, and they end up separating. And I think the key point that you even said was staying together, and I think that's what's important, and keeping that support when you lose your child, when you lose your loved one, like keep staying together and staying with your support system. So I love that. But
Yes.
oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, a lot of times we think we have to protect them, so we keep a lot of things from them. But the kids are so resilient,
Yeah,
and they need to know, and keeping a lot of things from them when it comes to grief and loss can actually confuse them and cause more hurt.
right.
And so having that open communication with them is great to have. That let them, because they are grieving. My kids, I remember they were mad about. They didn't feel like the doctors had did a good job,
Mm-hmm.
and they were like, I don't think the doctors did a good job, and I just listened to them while they vent. They were venting to me, and I had no response for it. I just listened, and I just told them I understand how they feel about it, and that, this is where we are, right now. They did have questions. I tried to explain to the best that I could. Sometimes I could not explain. Like I said, a lot of times it was just listening to them, allowing them to express their emotions. My 4-year old at the time, he went through not wanting to go to school, like separation anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
and I could tell that he was thinking that mommy might not return and pick me up like dad did.
Mm-hmm.
And so he went through that. They have a fear of losing the, the other parent.
Mm-hmm.
I injured my leg, and I can remember limping one night, and my 8-year-old saw that I was limping, and he
Mm.
went into anxiety.
Wow.
Like, Mama, what's wrong with you? And I was like, my leg is limping, but I'm gonna be okay. Then he just burst out and started crying. And then I said, baby, my leg is gonna be fine. I said, it's just hurting right now. I'm limping on it a little bit. And that's when my oldest looked at me and he said, you know why he's crying? And I said, no. I said, well, I didn't say come out and say exactly no. I gave him a look like, why? Why is he crying? And my oldest said, he's crying because you all we got.
Mm.
And at that moment, my heart just melted, because that's the kind of panic mode. And I assured my son that I was going to be okay. And I can remember later on that night around 10 o'clock, he got back up to come and check on me again. And
Mm-hmm.
then I showed him that my leg was feeling a lot better. They went through, of course, grades dropped.
Mm-hmm.
The grades did drop. During it was like my kids almost lost 2 years of learning, almost, because that 2020 was the really bad year. COVID hitting. Um, we lost their dad. Then 2021, I went into the hospital twice for mental health, and our family situation adjusted a little bit, because we had other people coming in to live with us, take turns
Mm-hmm.
living with us, so that they can help me with the kids until I became well again. And so we went through grades dropping as well. And I can remember my oldest went through a lot of anger. um, with the loss of his father. And when I would say certain things about God, I could literally see the anger in his face. So
Mm-hmm.
he was getting I can tell that he was angry with God about the loss. And so we talk about it a lot. I would intentionally now, I mean, I'm making sure my kids remember their father. We talk a lot about it. It helps in the healing process. And
Mm-hmm.
so I do things that will ensure that they don't forget their dad. And we do a lot of family time together. And I often sit down and allow them to express their emotions and how they feel. One day I took a pillow and I held it up because I was trying to see where my son, my oldest son, where he was in the grief process. So I took a pillow and I said, pretend like this pillow is, and this was just about a year ago, and my husband's been gone now 3 years. But I said, pretend like this pillow is you still expressing how you feel about the loss of your dad, and I want you to punch this pillow, just expressing to me how do you feel about it now. And he was punching the pillow so hard, I I ended up dropping the pillow.
Mm.
That's how much anger he still had. So
Wow.
this was about a year ago. They did counseling therapy for about 17 months. They had a male mentor,
Mm-hmm.
and that was great. It was a husband wife practice. The wife was the therapist, and the husband was the mentor. So they did that for about 17 months, and then schedules change and a lot of timings change, and so we stopped, but now have them back in there, in therapy now with the male therapist, which has been really great with continuing the process of healing and them expressing their emotions because they are reminded on and off that their dad is no longer here. You
Mm-hmm.
know, when Father's Day come around, just events in general, going places that they used to go with him, the games they used to play, you know, on a daily basis throughout the year, they're still constantly reminded of that. And they are in precious years of growing. So I want to make sure that they are okay. So I did get them back into therapy again to continue that process of healing.
I love what you said. Like I said we had questions, but I told you sometimes we just kind of go with it. I love what you said. That was so important because, like I told you, I have friends who've lost their children, who've lost their parent, who've lost their spouses, and one of the things I think we have a hard time doing, even me and as well, is actually healing. That's the key word. And taking those steps to heal. And you said it. You said so many great nuggets in there about taking those steps to heal. I love the tool that you did about the pillow. What a way to it. So that gives you an idea of how he's healing and what he's going through as well. And I
Yeah,
love that. And I love that one of the things you also said was keep talking about it. Keep don't let that person's memory be gone. Continue to talk about it
yes,
because that helps you heal. Not only is it helping your children go through that healing stage, but you as well, even if you don't want to go through it, you know. But I want to shift a little bit. So, I got your book. I got we got Nicola. She said major holidays is one of the things that trigger me and her and my kids. Because if she don't mind me saying, she did lose her son. And so like you mentioned, dealing with that loss. Holidays is a really big thing, and birthdays is definitely, I believe, yes, those are two of those things. And I think you even mentioned it with your husband, like when you had called me, say, hey, his birthday's around this time, and you try to do things to continue to honor him. And I
mm,
love that because I think if you act like they were never here, I think that you'll never heal. You're just hiding the pain.
right.
And I
And
love
that's, yes, and that's definitely something you don't want to do because um, the pain will eventually go as you begin to process your grief.
that. Mm-hmm.
And so we all have to do our grief homework. We have to lean into it. Is not an easy thing to do. A lot of times people say time heals, time does not heal.
Yeah.
God heals,
Amen.
and He heals with our cooperation.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
so we definitely have to do our part. Um, and it's not easy, but you can get through it. I'm a living witness to that.
Mm,
And God has a different way of bringing all of us to the other side. Your journey to the other side may look totally different from my journey,
right.
and it's not. how the journey looks. We don't compare your journey to anyone else's journey. Uh, just be thankful that God brought you to the other side,
Amen.
and put your faith and trust in him, and don't compare yourself with other people, and how he did it for them, because it may be a different process for you, because we all have different purposes and assignment. And I remember in the beginning the Lord spoke to me and said he was turning my pain into passion. Now
Mm-hmm.
this has become a passion for me, and I'm just so grateful to be used in this way, to be able to impact others' life. And it was a roller coaster. I mean, the thoughts of suicide was coming in that depression stage,
Mm-hmm.
um, 10 times a day or more. And I was constantly fighting the thoughts of suicide. I didn't want to kill myself. It was like the spirit of suicide was trying to force me into suicide and put this blindfolder on my face, like there was no way out of my situation. And so I had to continue to press forward. And like I said, I had so many people praying for me, because I got to where I couldn't even pray for myself.
Wow.
But people were praying for me. And all I could remember sometimes was saying, Lord, I'm in your hands and I'm at your mercy. They that call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, God, I'm calling on you. That's all I could say. I couldn't put anything else, like, God, I'm calling on you. I'm in your hands and I'm at your mercies. And so, and it took time. I was off work the first time in the hospital, maybe about 6 weeks, I think 6 to 8 weeks. Second time, about 6 to 8 weeks. And then I returned back to work each time. And it was a process of getting the right medications that would help me, until I was able to heal. And even on the medication didn't do all of the work. It was a resource that the Lord allowed me to use that did help me. And I'm so thankful that the medication was available. But
Mm-hmm.
I had to actually still do the work. Um, I had to still do the work. The
Mm-hmm.
medication didn't answer all the problems. I still
Right.
had my emotions. And I thank God I was on one medication where I didn't have emotions. And I had told the doctor, let's come off of that one. I don't want to take that one. I was made to have emotions. And that's how I healed. And so I did my grief homework. I got into therapy. I wish I would have got into it in the beginning. It was a few months. I got my kids started first, and I got started a few months after them. But I wish I would have started earlier, in the process with therapy. But I got in therapy as well, and then the kids stayed in therapy. But uh, those are it can be it can be messy.
Mm-hmm.
It can be intense. Um, Grief can be so confusing. You might be thinking you're almost to the acceptance stage, and then it seems like you double back to the denial stage. So you can go in and out of those stages of grief, but just know that you're still moving forward. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of times when those different stages come, I would at some point I'll be like, "Am I healing?" It looked like I went backwards today, like that. But I was reminded what a therapist told me. He was like, when you're on a plane, I think it was a therapist that said this. He was like, you may get up on that plane and move to the back seat, but the plane is still going forward.
Mm-hmm.
So the plane has not changed its position. It's still moving forward, even
Mm-hmm.
though you had to take a seat backwards. So sometimes that's what grief looks like. You go in and out of the phases, but you're still moving forward, and things are getting better. And one day you'll begin to see the light at the end of that tunnel, and you'll realize that, hey, I made it. To God be the glory. To God be the glory.
Let me tell you, she answered all my questions, y'all. I didn't even have to ask nothing. Like, this is the Evangelist Shaunda show. She got it. Like, I didn't even have to do nothing. Like, when I tell you she didn't gave us so many nuggets, man. She talked about healing, right? You talked about talking about it, keeping those pictures out there, helping your children go through that process. You also talked about the airplane and how things still keep moving, even though you're going in the back, but the plane still keeps going forth, and you got to keep going. You got to keep doing. And the two biggest things that I really want to express and really stretch on is therapy is not a bad thing. I think
No.
we get so wrapped up in our society that, oh, we can't talk to a shrink, we can't do this. Therapy helps you, and you learn to advocate for yourself, just like Shaunda did. She
Yeah.
also did the research on what medication she could take and not take. So I
Yeah.
feel like we can do this, but we have to do the work and want to do it, because so many people stay in that funk. They stay in that little dark tunnel, and you were refusing to say, I shall live and not die. And you kept going and you kept speaking, even when you thought you couldn't. And I love that. And I just thank you for being that testimony for, I was even going to read some out of her book. Y'all, I didn't even get a chance to do that. So I'm going to just throw it out here. This book right here, if y'all can see it, tell us about this book real quick. Tell us a little
Um,
bit, because I didn't get just read nothing. Tell us about this book.
yes, the title of my first book is When Our Hearts Are Broken, A Story of Triumph Over Grief, Trauma, and Mental Illness. I started writing the book maybe about a year after losing my husband, and it took me a little bit over a year and a half to finish it up. And it was because as I was writing the book, I was reliving. It felt like I was reliving some of the things that I had went through, and so it was difficult. So sometimes I would write and I would put it away and then come back and write. But I knew I would be telling my story. I could remember at the altar in prayer in my bathroom, and I was on my knees just crying out to God. And
Mm,
all I kept saying out of my mouth was, God, I'll tell my story. And I couldn't get anything else out. That it just kept coming out of my mouth over and over and over again. God, I'll tell my story.
mm,
Let this pain ease, and that's all I can remember saying. And so I knew, and a lot of times for me, things have come out of my mouth and then I'll learn about it after. And
mm,
so I knew after that time of just crying out to the Lord and just constantly saying, I'll tell my story, I knew that I would be telling my story. So from that, I picked up pen and paper and I started writing. And writing is very therapeutic for me. When I'm writing, I feel like I'm relieving the emotions that I have on the inside are coming out. So definitely, I encourage anyone that's dealing with grief to journal, not just grief, just issues in general. You'll be surprised of what you'll write down, and you can go back and read it, and the Lord will use it to help you. And so I knew that I would be telling my story, and I did, and I put it into a book, which is my first book that I released. Um, and it talks about the stages of grief, it talks about mental health, it talks about trauma, and it talks about what happened in my life, how I was able to overcome. And I put things in there that I thought would be helpful to others to help them overcome whatever they're currently dealing with as it relates to grief, trauma, and mental illness. And so that's my book. And it's available on Amazon as well as on my blog, allthingsshonda.org. When I was writing the book, my kids were just, some days they would come in, they was like, "Are you done?" And I was like, "No, I'm not done. I just got a little bit more." And they was like, "Okay, we'll stay right here and we won't bother you." And next thing I know, they're playing football and stuff in the room, or and so but it was great. They knew I was writing it. I talked to them about the book. And I can remember my oldest one day, while we were riding, he said, "Mom, I believe your book is going to bless a lot of
mm.
people. I believe it's going to help a lot of
Yes,
people."
yes.
And that was just really, really touched my heart. And he also, one day we were riding and he was like, "We're in a better place."
Mm,
And so it makes me feel so good when your kids begin to recognize that we're in a better place. The anxiety that my sons were experiencing is has left. Um, we're beginning to see better results in school. It was a slow turnaround, but we're hey, it turned around. So we
right.
thank God for the turnaround.
Amen.
With their as far as their learning in school, they were very clingy. Where my kids would sleep in the room with me at night
Mm,
um, after losing their father. All three boys would be in the bed. They were very clingy, and I learned that they draw closer to the parent that is still living when they lose one.
Mm.
And they become clingy because they be afraid to lose the other one. So for about a year after losing my husband and my kids slept in the bed with me.
Mm.
And thank we were way past that stage now. And so that was something that we went through a lot of little things, but those were the things that stood out the most.
Mm.
When they cried, I told them it's okay to cry. So, they cried, expressed their feelings. My oldest one, a lot of times I think he felt like he had to be the stronger one.
Mm.
But I remember also talking to him, not just, of course, we talked a lot about the anger, but we also talked a lot about his emotion, and it's okay for him to cry. And I remember one time he was like, he told me while he was off to himself, he did cry. I never really seen him just come out and cry like I have seen my younger two, but
Mhm.
he did say that he was crying about it, and
Wow.
I know I have seen him get real teary-eyed about it.
Mhm.
So he's a lot better today. They are enjoying their male therapists,
Praise
and
God.
that's one of the things I encourage. Whatever the lacking is, you can surround them with people that will help to give them what they don't have. Like my kids, their father's gone, so I made sure I got them a male therapist.
Mhm.
I talked to their coaches. One of the things I learned in therapy was talk to the coaches, let the coaches make them aware that, they
Mm.
no longer have a father. That way, when the coaches are working with them, they can speak life into them and say
Mm.
positive,
Mm.
encouraging words to them.
Um,
Even this year, I had the opportunity to put one of my sons, in a classroom where he could have two female teachers, or put him where he can have a male and a female. And I put him with the male and the female teacher because the male role was very important to me.
mhm.
And this particular male teacher is also a coach.
Mhm.
So all I'm looking for ways. Of course, they have a amazing youth pastor
Mhm.
at our church that is always speaking life into them.
Yeah.
And when I have the pastor of the church, so I have different you pull on your resources,
Amen.
use those resources that are available. So I have different positive male roles, man of God, just great man in society, period, that
Mhm.
is speaking into their lives, that is working with them. And so whatever it is that you see that lack, God will send you resources that can help fill in that gap. Of
Amen.
course, it won't be the same as what you had before. We all realize in our household that everything looks a lot different now.
Right.
It does. Making the decisions by myself now. That can be hard at times,
Mhm.
especially when you have a teenager now. That
Mm. Yeah. Preach.
that pushes that pushes the button sometimes,
Mhm.
and he has. So you have to make decisions by yourself. Um, that's different. Grief can cloud your thinking.
Mhm.
I, I, one of the things that I refrained from was making major decisions in the midst of my grief. I really did. And I remember one major decision that I tried to make in the midst of my grief, um, but the Lord didn't allow it to be so. And I'm so thankful that He did not. I was trying to, not trying, I was right at closing. I was buying us a new house, and I was putting our home that we're still in now, I was putting it up for rent. And we were close to closing on the new house, and this house had already been paperwork and everything done to be rented out. And I was trying to get out of the house because it reminded me so much of what I once had.
Mm.
And I started having flashbacks because my husband passed out at home,
Mm.
so he collapsed at home. And so I started having flashbacks, and I was trying to just run away from everything that I was feeling out. And I was like, oh, I'm about to get us out of this house. And and so thankful that that didn't go the way I wanted it to. Because I look back now, it's just the timing was not right.
Mhm.
Also, looking back at the house, that house wasn't what we needed uh,
Right.
at the time. The neighborhood wasn't even what I really, really liked. And so it clouds your thinking. And I look back now and I was like, you know what? I'm not going to move there.
Mhm.
Those houses too close. I don't know what I was thinking about. You
Right.
know, just different things that before my mind was just on, I got to get out of this. You
Mhm.
know, you hit that ejection button, you want to get out. And so that's what it was, but I wasn't allowed to. And thank God, all of that, the flashbacks are no longer there. My mental, physical, and emotional health has been restored. The kids are doing well. And we're enjoying life now. We're laughing a lot. We're talking about their dad a lot. And we're having fun. And we watch videos sometimes where they get to see their dad and some of the things he was, did with them.
Mhm.
And they can sit for his birthday. Um, we just sat and did movie night at home, and they asked a lot of questions, and they talked about things that they remembered about him. But definitely know that grief will cloud your thinking. So I highly encourage just holding off on making major decisions until you are out of the intensity
From that,
of
yeah.
the grief, because you'll be able to think a lot clearer and make better decisions for you and your household. So.
Thank you so much. This has been amazing. Like I'm saying, y'all, I had questions. I'm telling you, but when God takes over, you just let Him do it, and I love it. And I pray that people really hear some of these great tools and things. Like you dropped a lot of golden nuggets. Like I'm so full and just blessed with your words and your triumph and what God has brought you through, and to see you putting your testimony out there and putting yourself out there for people to be blessed, to be a blessing is wonderful. And I just thank God for you. I thank you for coming on tonight. We had a little bit of technical difficulties, but it was
Yes.
amazing. I'm excited that you're here. Guys, this was my last show for the year. Next year, we'll be back with some more topics, new guests.
Yes.
But I went out with a bang. I think that hands down, it's one of my wonderful shows, and I love it. It was, I mean, my emotions were everywhere. I was just like, I want to cry, I want to laugh. I don't know what I want to do. But I feel like I learned so much, and I pray that you who are watching it learn so much too. Sandra Matthews said, "Yes, therapy helps," and she said, "This was some great information. Please share this, you guys. Share this with someone that you know is dealing with loss, a family member. Share this because Evangelist, she came out with some stuff, and she has another book too. It's a children's book. Can you tell them the name of the children's book too?
Yes, the
You got
title
it
of my
right
latest book is Ray of Sunshine.
there. Ooh, I like
And
that.
it is this book about a little girl named Hope who brings happiness to everybody she encounters. She spreads the love of Jesus and hope. And she encourages kids that have been teased or bullied or just dealing with low self esteem. It's a great book. It can touch on a lot of different topics, but this is my newest release.
I love that. And you know, I love anything with children. I love it. And I feel like it really ties into what you talked about with your kids. So this is a great book for healing too, I think too, because so many children deal with so much. And I love it. So
And
I
it's
will make sure, oh, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say it's surrounding a school setting. The
Mm,
setting
ooh,
happens, yes.
I
So
like
a lot of things take place at school.
mm,
And so this book is a great book that will share ways that kids can encourage others and be there for each other when they are dealing with difficult situations in school.
I like that. And so, you know, a lot of stuff happens in school as parents. We don't know really what goes on unless our
Yes,
kids tell us. And sometimes they won't tell us everything. So I love that. Well, I just want to say thank you for coming on, sharing your story,
you're
sharing
welcome.
everything. And I will put how they can get in contact with you. I'll put your blog on there. You guys got to check out her blog. She put some great things on. You think this was good? Check out her blog. That's all I'm saying. But I
Yes,
appreciate you
thank
guys. Thank
you.
y'all so much. Everybody have a great holiday, a great year.
Yeah,
Parenting 10 will be back next year. Thank you, Evangelist. I appreciate you. God bless you.
you're
See y'all
welcome.
next time.
Have a good one.